All right, guys. We have a special guest, Dan Zack, WSOP Player of the Year. Week 16 is upon us. Let's rip this. All right, guys. As we said, special guest today, Dan Zack, WSOP 2022 Player of the Year. Also a best ball grinder, someone that I battled a lot in the DK 555 streets this year. Feels like, at a certain point, the only names I really knew was you and Tanner Tolbert, I feel, in the lobbies. Dan, how you doing today, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on again, Liam. I'm happy to be here, and it's been fun to sweat the last couple weeks.
Yeah. I had Dan on in the summer, and we did a draft together, and we kind of talked about some strategy. Dan is someone who, I'm going to try to surmise some things he said the best of my ability. I didn't rewatch the episode, but he said basically you did a little bit of rudimentary coding work to try to study best ball, and you had some takeaways about how to apply what you researched. I remember I didn't fully agree with everything you said at the time, but I really just wanted to, people have heard my takeaways, but happy to talk them out with you. But any lessons you feel like you learned from 2022? We're going to talk some good process, bad outcome takes we think we had, some the opposite if that occurred. We're going to look at any of Dan's BBM3 teams that he has left in the contest. So, yeah, let's just open it up there, Dan. How has best ball been treating you? What are some of the takeaways? Obviously, I'm not expecting you to have reflected on this a ton, but any takeaways you have this year, if any, to this point in the season?
Well, it was a decent season despite being really bad at player takes, which I guess is promising. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me, again, I was supposed to learn this last year, but it's just so fun to do it. But to stop trying to be an NFL scout and just draft an even distribution of the players that clump at the same ADPs. They're at least less aggressive than I've been. Although I know I'm not even like on the crazy scale. I don't think I have anyone over 30%, but still, things like taking CEH over everyone at that ADP for your running back this year really hurts when Josh Jacobs is there and you just end up with 0 Josh Jacobs and 30% CEH instead of at least like 2010 would have been great instead, but it's okay.
I seem to remember you also were a big James Conner guy, which
Yep.
seems like and I think you had a lot of Saquon. I don't remember. I just remember you typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems you typically prioritize robust running back drafts, typically trying to get 2 to 3 in the first couple rounds. Is that the case?
Yeah, everything I did before the season, especially so the 20-round drafts, we talked about this over the summer. The 20-round drafts, you can kind of do a lot of things according to whatever nonsense I typed into a computer and it spit back at me. Whereas the 18 rounds, it really wanted to have. It didn't require it, but there were few builds that it liked that didn't have 4 running backs by round 10 and then just being done at running back for the rest of the draft. Like it really preferred those builds almost over everything else. There were a few exceptions to the rule, and I tried to build numerous teams with different player profiles of the builds that didn't follow that exact build. But it really wanted to have your 4 running backs and your only 4 running backs in by round 10. And so I ended up with a ton of teams like that on Underdog, and on DraftKings with the 20-round stuff, it was a lot more varied because it seemed like you could do a lot more things and have them all be reasonable in terms of expectation for the season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think some of, like basically what you are talking about is doing historical research and then applying that to a given year.
Yep.
And I think some of what that can ignore maybe is the current draft landscape. For example, I thought one or two things was true this year with a bunch of the namesake early running backs kind of getting up there in age, your Dalvin Cooks, your Derrick Henrys. I thought either, well, hey, this is a smash year for 0 RB because if a bunch of these guys fail, I should get stealing performances at the wide receiver position, load up with volume. On the other hand, it's a smash year to go maybe hero RB, selecting one running back early. And I would argue both people probably feel correct about that take. If you heroed an Austin Eckler team, you feel great. If you heroed a CMC team, you feel great. A Derrick Henry team, even, you feel good about. If you heroed a Najee Harris team, maybe not so much, right? So, and if you went 0 RB and you hit 0 running back targets such as Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, Ken Walker, wow, you built a monster squad. If you 0 RB the team and you ended up with Ronald Jones and Rashad Penny, and basically there's going to be variance what happens in the season. I think people are pretty bad in general about reviewing what happened versus what was likely to happen or what was predictive kind of to happen. For example, I think a lot of people will view Josh Jacobs and they're just going to be like, well, Josh Jacobs was a smash. You should have just taken him and foreseen this. I don't really have that take. My take with Josh Jacobs is I think he was a bad pick when he was going in the 6th round. And when he dropped down to the 7th, the 8th, the 9th round, I'm not so confident in my player takes that I'm not going to start mixing him in. Now, a lot of things went Josh Jacobs' way as well. And I've already talked about this a lot, but like Hunter Renfrow went down, Darren Waller went down, and the guys who could have kept pace with the Josh Jacobs, we're talking your Breece Halls, your J.K. Dobbins, maybe Elijah Mitchell, like maybe the more ETN even, maybe these more expensive guys who could have, not made Josh Jacobs such a monstrous advantage were zeros basically. So now you don't have that many running backs in the player pool who could keep pace, not to mention all the 1st and 2nd round running backs being equal or worse to Josh Jacobs. What does that do to a player pool, right? So I think we should try to, look through basically what was good process by us, what was not, and not just try to get so granular with like, well, I didn't take X player, so I was bad, and I don't know, but that can get tricky too, where it's like a Cam Akers, if you were taking a Cam Akers when he fell 2 rounds, it was probably a shitty pick no matter what. Same with CEH, right? Like I think I'm someone who's not afraid to have stands, have player evaluations. Now I'm wrong all the time, right? Like I had 2%, 3% Josh Jacobs when he was going early. And then I was just fortunate to save some drafts for late on DK high stakes. And that's where I got some Josh Jacobs. Another good example would be when Rashad Penny was more expensive than Ken Walker. I started taking Ken Walker. When the opposite was true, I took Penny. And then, but it kind of burned me because I didn't chase up a Ramondre. I didn't chase up a Jalen Hurts. So how do you feel about, I don't know, some of what I'm saying there and how you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not in a mode where I go back and I'm saying, wow, I should have, it was a mistake to not correctly player evaluate Josh Jacobs as the smash, and I'm an idiot for player evaluating CEH as like being slightly better at the cost, and so then just going like higher on him. It's not really that important to me. Best ball, again, the reason I do some of the player take stuff is just because it's fun, and
Yeah.
if you're going to draft 1,500 teams, like it's a little bit more fun to, especially as a football fan, kind of take some stands as to what you believe in. But just from watching people over the years doing this on different content streams and whatnot, no one knows what the fuck's going to happen in the NFL season, and the players' ADPs historically are pretty good at predicting average outcomes, but there's like crazy spikes in both directions, and no one, no matter how smart they think they are, is like good at predicting those crazy spikes. So I think being more oriented towards just the structures and less oriented towards the actual player's performance is a much better way to, if you're trying to seriously approach best ball, to do evaluation after the season and worry way less about the specific players on the teams.
So do you have any maybe leaks in your game you feel you learned from this year, or just things you want to do differently next year from what you've learned to this point? Or have you not had enough time to reflect on this? Or, like obviously what happened this season, if you run it again, is not happening, right? So it's like it's hard to even like have like huge takeaways like that. But I don't know, any things like that at this time that you feel like you would like to do differently?
It'll be an interesting year to throw in of data to then rerun the same stuff that I have, because I think this was a season that was very different from the previous 4 or 5 seasons in terms of the distribution of where points came from at different positions. Like the tight end falling off outside of the top one is going to be a huge difference maker. How strong elite QB was and how weak late QBs were this season is particularly interesting, given past seasons, QBs like 26 through 32 off the board have been really valuable. And not at all this season. Like most of them got benched or hurt. So it'll be really interesting to see how it all affects what outputs from the nonsense again that I type into a computer look like. In terms of leaks,
could you walk the people through a little bit more, just refresh their memory about what you were doing with the computer research, just to help set the stage for that?
I built a program that takes any structure you feed it. So you tell it either 18 or 20 rounds, half PPR, full PPR, DK scoring, or whatever. You pick the format you're going to use. You type in 20 rounds, position by round. So you just type in 20 straight positions in order. So you type in running back, wide receiver, QB, running back, wide receiver, whatever, times 20. And it goes and builds, 10,000 teams from the last 5 seasons of data, randomly picking players that match the position and draft round or close to it, depending on how many there are in the.
And is it trying to correlate it all? Like, is it prioritizing a stack?
No stacking.
Okay.
So it just picks. So if you type in a quarterback in the 5th round, it will go find a quarterback drafted in the last 5 years between round 4 or 6 and put that on team 1. And then it will re-randomize for team 2, and it will do that for 10,000 teams. And it will build 10,000 teams with the same structure. It will use best ball scoring over the course of the season for all of them. And then it will spit back out an average, as well as other things that I found useful, like how often it places in the top, 16.6% of teams, because that's like an advance rate in a 2 out of 12. And so you're looking at how these structures do both on average and how they do in spike seasons. And so no matter what structure you type in, it will have crazy high seasons. Like it could just drill all the players that mashed. But if you do it 10,000 times, you get a pretty good idea of what structures do and don't perform well on average. And so you then just go and try to draft the ones that seemingly do well.
Okay. Now, and by structure, does it care? Like, let's say it spits out, I don't know, 3-5-9-3. Does it care if your 5 running backs came from the early rounds? Or if your 5...
No. By structure, I don't just mean 3-5-9-3. I mean in order 20 rounds. 3-5-9-3 could be a good structure or an awful structure, depending on where you're drafting your 3, your 5, your 9, and your 3.
Sure.
This is not just testing a 3-5-9-3. It's testing a very exact 3-5-9-3. And then you can have it test hundreds of 3-5-9-3.
3-5-9-3 if running backs came from 1st and 2nd versus 4th and 5th versus,
it's very specific. So like 1st, 2nd, 4th, 9th, and 11th versus 1st, 2nd, 7th. And once you put all of, you can run 20,000 3-5-9-3 combinations. So there's so many different ways to draft 3-5-9-3, like literally almost an infinite number. I'm sure it's like an insane number of how many ways there are. But you can sim a ton of different 3-5-9-3s and then look at the output of all of them. You'll see which 3-5-9-3s are good and which 3-5-9-3s are garbage, like very quickly.
Now,
it's not hard to identify the patterns between all the ones that do well versus not.
Did you not build in force a stack because you don't have the coding knowledge, or because you thought it was more useful to not? Because it's to me, it's like, well, if you're not including stacks, it's kind of like no one's actually doing that,
I couldn't think of a way with how small the sample is to not have some issues that come up once you start forcing stacks. I definitely think So talking of leaks, like there is a bunch of things that I want to think of better ways to code this offseason, because this is, I don't know, it's just like randomly fun for me. It's not like this is some, you can only get 70 or 80K down in a season. So it's not scalable to some crazy expectation, but it's nerdy and it's fun.
Sure.
That's one thing I really like to think about. Like I definitely take away from this season. I mean, I definitely stack. Like, I don't get me wrong. If you have a tiebreaker between two players and you're going for a certain structure, I'm taking the guy that stacks towards a team. I might even want to stack more looking at this season and the last couple of seasons recently, just given it seems like offenses succeed and fail together. So it's not just for the spike weeks at the end for the playoff weeks, but it's also just over the course of the season. Like you wanted all the Rams or none of the Rams. Like it turns out you wanted none of the Rams.
Yeah.
But like it's very rare to have individual guys just crush on an offense and everyone fails around them. And it's fairly common for lots of guys on the same team to beat ADP in terms of advance rates and being a worthwhile draft pick. So I definitely want to go even. I don't know exactly how to test it again, because it's just, you're looking at such smaller sample sizes doing this because there's only 32 teams to stack a season. So even in the last 5 seasons, that's only 160 sample is not something crazy, but it definitely seems like teams succeed and fail together against ADP. And so the heavier you stack, probably the better.
Yeah, with the expensive players, I would agree with that. But like even the like knee-jerk logic by me, even the players that do fail by themselves, I would say hit some patterns. They're probably cheap rookies. So these are your Christian Watsons, your Garrett Wilsons of the world, where okay, yes, Breece Hall was a hit, he got hurt. So Aaron Jones I wouldn't say was a hit, he's serviceable. But like really, it's like Christian Watson and no one. Now, part of that's obviously injury related. Same with Garrett Wilson. Like, he's just so much better, but like you could even probably build that pattern. And, I don't exactly want to help a programmer because that's not what I do. That's not how I attack best ball. But like, to me, logically, that makes some sense where it's like, cheaper rookie on offense we're not stoked about for passing. Maybe that's a guy that we are okay with like isolating, not within a stack. Especially if it's like questionable, the quarterback would get benched. And is that
it definitely makes sense as to how you would go about like picking your one-ups that you go off of from the stacks that you're building within your team. The other thing that I really want to work in, and this one seems much easier to work in than what we're talking about now, is weeks 15 to 17 performance. Because I'm curious, and I didn't have time last offseason to test if certain structures perform better in week 15 to 17. So like, does a 0 RB team do better in weeks 15 to 17, even if it performs worse in weeks 1 to 14, just given that, the running back position gets injured more often. And so you are more likely to get value out of premium wide receivers in late weeks, and not strangely, predictably more likely to get value out of late round running backs in the late of the season as teams give up on the season or as running backs have gotten hurt. So it would be interesting to look at, given how top heavy most of these tournaments are, especially the lower stakes ones, how differently certain structures perform weeks 1 through 14 versus weeks 15 through 17. Even if it'll be small sample because you're only getting 3 weeks a season.
Yeah, and questions like those I was going to bring up, like I really just try to think about it logically. And 2 things make sense to me about that specific question. A, of course, what you said, 0 RB should get stronger later in the season, as if a first round guy, second round guy gets hurt and you have the handcuffs, whatnot. On the other hand, if it's a blizzard storm come later, I would guess that maybe teams are running the ball a little bit more. If you're not targeting teams in domes and whatnot. So, and, like what happened these weeks 15, 16, 17, like last year, half the league got COVID. Like, what can we really even take away from last year other than it was probably the most chaotic season we'll ever see? This year, we're seeing, we saw Jalen Hurts is probably out for the year. That's obviously or out for the season. I hope he plays, but I don't really know. Like, that's going to have huge impact on what happened. So how many BBM threes did you advance, and how many did you get through to week 16?
I advanced 40 out of round 1, and I advanced 3 out of round 2.
All right. Do you want to share your screen or send me the teams on Twitter and we can pull them up and look at them?
Sure. Give me 1 second. I will take a picture of them and send them to you.
Cool. No rush on that. Guys in the chat, if you have question, like I see some people asking me about like offenses next year. That's not what we're doing today. We're not trying to predict 2023. We're trying to reflect on 2022. So if you have good questions to ask Dan or myself about reflecting on 2022, please ask them away and I will highlight them and ask them. Yeah, Cobra brings up being under on Pitts. He was all industry hype. I've brought this up before where you're trying to, there's a lot of crowd think that goes on a platform like Underdog where more of the player pool listens to content. And I've had some success fading some of the crowd think guys who I know people who are really plugged in are probably in on and just saying, hey, I'll take anyone else. Now, guys like that for me this year were like Pitts for sure. I just thought he was a very risky pick. Now he is a tight end, so I'm always okay with tight end more so than a wide receiver on a bad offense. But I'm someone who really does try to approach this top down, and for the early rounds, as far as like examples I've given is I was never taking DJ Moore on half point PPR versus a Mike Williams, where I just thought it was very unlikely, that they would score more touchdowns. All right, so I'm getting Dan's teams ready here. Let me see how to do this. Open link, new window. No. Open image, new tab.
Yeah, sent them over. I also, when we're done with this, would love to show. I have one team left in that 5-5-5 that we did a lot with, but I think it might be a very, very good team. So I'm pretty pumped about it.
You got one through in the 5-5-5?
Yeah, it was pretty disappointing because I advanced 11.
That's rough. See, I got 9 through and I got 3 alive. So I'm really hoping
in like 4 of them I like can't take it. But
yeah.
people.
I brought this up yesterday, but the Christian Watson no touchdown, where I don't know if you watched that game where he got like back-to-back targets on the one. That was hurting my advance rate. But let's pull up these teams. And then Dan, maybe you could also share. I remember in the offseason you were big on Tyler Lockett. You also tried to book a bet against me about Corey Davis versus Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. Who were some of the players you were in on?
Well, Tyler Lockett on your show, I was just saying that he's outscored DK Metcalf every year, and he goes like 50 picks behind DK Metcalf every year. And it made no sense to me. That was someone I took a lot of and took very little DK Metcalf. And Tyler Lockett again outscored DK Metcalf by like another 1.5. And he's still cheaper than him on DraftKings every week. And he's still going to go 50 picks behind him next year. And I just don't understand.
And what's kind of funny about Tyler Lockett is I think you are right. Tyler Lockett had a great year. However, he kind of was selected around where a lot of those league-winning running backs went. So he was in the same so like if you were someone like me who I wasn't getting as much Tyler Lockett because I had more Stephon Diggs, I had more Mike Williams, I had more Hollywood, right? So like that's when I was getting my running backs. You probably were getting a little bit less of the Ramondres, the Miles Sanders because you were taking
and the way it worked out, for sure, you'd rather have gone elite wide receiver and running back in round 9 where Tyler Lockett was going. But it's more just like the DK Metcalf versus Tyler Lockett was, that's just sort of luck of the draw of where those go. It was just these two guys' ADPs don't make sense to me. Metcalf shouldn't be going 50 spots ahead of Lockett. He's just every season Lockett scores 1.5 more per game than him. Every single season. And every season we get back to the drafts and Lockett is going 50 spots behind him.
I mean, you were right, but it's like
he's going to drop off at some point. I know he's finally starting to get old, but this hasn't made sense for the last.
Yeah, and he broke his hand, but that's a bummer. But like you were right, but it
hurts anyway because I understand because the running backs happen to go off in that exact round.
Sure, and also like I hear this a lot where people are like, "Why would I take player X when I can get player Y who's like the same thing at a cheaper cost? And I would say, a lot of times that logic to me is advance rate logic. But when you're playing playoff weeks and, some people just can't accept that these are like individual weeks, like it doesn't really matter. And so, anyways, let's review these teams and I'll bring up some more about that. But so this is a Hurts Goff team. I have that combo too on one of my Hurts teams. 3 of my teams are Hurts. I think he's going to play. I have nothing. I'm just an optimist. I think he's playing. I don't think he would run a lot, but I think he's playing. So Javonte obviously Hurts. Zeke, Zeke's probably low owned and has he's been really solid, but he can do it any week. Chase Edmonds obviously out. White is good, Mostert's good, and Williams is good, but obviously high owned. You got JJ, obviously the smash of smashes. DJ Moore, at least better with Darnold. Cooper, solid. Judy playing good. Tony probably going to pick up snaps this week, I would guess. Like maybe at least get to like 20 or so. I still believe in his talent immensely if he's seen the field. Russell Gage, who was one of my guys who clearly did not work out from a regular team. Yeah, but to me, I thought Russell Gage has been injured all year, and he kind of was. Like he got injured early up, and he was almost a smash if the Bucs were good, in the sense that Julio got hurt, Mike Evans has kind of fallen off. Godwin started the year, which no one thought was like in the realm, right? And so Gage attached to like the point is like why I like try to take guys like Russell Gage over guys like Deontay Johnson, like not the same cost player, but whatever.
But same cost would be what, like Kenny Galladay at the time?
Yeah, sure. Whatever. Like a guy but like I'm trying to take the guys on offenses. I think the quarterbacks are throwing for 300 yards regularly, can get 2 to 3 touchdowns. And half one PPR, you're just drawn thin to get that on offenses we perceive to be bad. Now we're going to be wrong sometimes, a la the Seahawks, right?
Or the Bucs this year.
Or the Bucs. We're going to be wrong on the good side too, a la the Rams, a la the Bucs. I still think you're excited for Bucs pieces if they were cheap. But the point is, us as an industry is getting much, much better at predicting fantasy quarterbacks, and therefore we should probably try to prioritize their pass catchers with that. Now, solid looking team, especially this tight end combo to get Goddard through this round, obviously helped by Russell Gage, helped by Justin Jefferson, and helped by Hurts. So probably a lower scoring pod you advance that out of.
It scored like 145 or something, or 148, I think.
Yeah, one of a lower scoring pods. But now you're live where you got 2 tight ends who were not going to be super high owned. You're not stoked about Fuller and Cedric Wilson, but your wide receivers are solid. Other than that, you got
there's a lot of dead spots on this team. This team's not super exciting, but it's not dead. It's
definitely
not
dead. Yeah, and you got Goff to Jamal stack, which that's something I did too on quarterbacks. I was like real iffy about late, where like I would have like if I was taking a Davis Mills, maybe the only stack I had was like Dameon Pierce. Maybe the only stack I had with Baker Mayfield was CMC. Like not, like it's just me just trying to fill in quarterback positions late. It seems like you did that with the Goff Williams.
Sometimes this is the result of getting sniped too. Like this might have been going for Mayfield with the DJ Moore pick, and then Mayfield gets picked right in front of Goff. I don't remember the exact draft, but
absolutely, yes.
Like this team also might have been going for like a Hurts Brady stack at some point and just missed it.
Yes.
So
solid looking one. The next one, you got Josh Allen, so it's live to win the whole tourney. The past couple winners have had Josh Allen, including myself. Playing on the Blizzard this week. You feel great about that. Matt Ryan benched out for the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told the story on Twitter, but in my home league, I have Jalen Hurts, and the guy knocked out of the playoffs. Spite picked up a bunch of the quarterbacks to try to like prevent me, and he picked up Matt Ryan. I just thought it was so funny. Couldn't even like spite try to like couldn't even spite me correctly. Yeah. All right, running backs: Najee, Montgomery, Sanders, Melvin Gordon, Jamal. So Najee has good matchups, at least on paper. Like not week 17 against the Ravens, but this week against the Raiders, like that's a good matchup. And they are using Jalen Warren more, but he can score touchdowns.
It's low owned. It's nice. I'm not upset to have him through here.
No, you'd prefer he was a player you perceive with a higher ceiling, but in half point PPR, 101 is a solid score to advance. Montgomery has what we used to think would be a great matchup against the Lions week 17. We're not so sure anymore. They've been pretty good against running backs, but it's still going to be probably in a high scoring game. Sanders, obviously a great pick. Melvin Gordon looking like a zero.
Activate him.
What?
Please. I said activate him, please.
No. I'm more on the Ronald Jones, Pacheco, McKinney. See, guys like Melvin Gordon, I pretty much X out of the player pool. Is like, I usually go, if a 32-year-old running back's going to be the reason I don't win, so be it. Like, good game to everyone. Like, I'm just never chasing these old dudes who used to be great. And, like, look, it's going to burn me one year, but Latavius Murray last year.
James Conner last year.
He was not 32, though. He was like 26.
Was Melvin Gordon 32?
Melvin Gordon is old.
I don't think so.
29.
Yeah, he's not 32. I mean,
32 in running back years.
Yeah. It's not. What's James Conner's age? 27. Yeah, they're 2 years apart.
That's a big, like 28's like about a bit of an age cliff.
Okay.
Wide receivers, you got to be stacked to have a Diggs-Davis combo through in the playoffs where pretty low owned or pretty low advancement because they both did not smash. And hey, they get the Bears this week. You know, Josh Allen pretty weatherproof.
Them too. It's the nuclear stack.
Yeah, and you get the Bengals week 17. So like, I'd be stoked to have that. You got DJ Moore again. You got Ayuk. He's playing at least. Parker probably will be back, if not this week, next. Osborne. You have to imagine they use Osborne more after that explosion. Like,
I hope so. Got a lot of Osborne left.
Yeah. Hey. Marvin Jones, Brian Pringle, Knox, and Ingram. Now let's talk about Knox a little bit because, I've brought forth the idea, and some people bristle at this, but sometimes we want to be selecting people who we think might be lower advance rate, but give us leverage in playoff weeks. Now, I'm not going to pretend I have a crystal ball, but I think some of the players I probably would have put on that list going into the season are a Javonte Williams, if he really was splitting with Melvin Gordon, where maybe he doesn't smash the regular season, but when the money matters, would have a full role. I would have probably put an AJ Dillon, who seemed pretty expensive for what he was, but contingent value, whatever. He's a big dude. It makes sense. You could smash in the snow. And I would have put all the tight ends that cost around Knox purely because I had 40% Knox, something like egregiously high. And the reason was not only was he attached to Josh Allen at the tight end position, but he was going around where all the league winning, like I was really confident in that stretch of running backs. So it's like, it's negative advance rate to take a Knox when you're not getting a Sanders or Ramondre, et cetera. But when it's such a high variance position anyways, and you would kill to have leverage at the tight end position week 17, what are your thoughts about maybe layering in guys who we think could be lower advance rate that would, do? And look, if they're high advance rate, whatever, that's okay too. High advance rate players are like a Josh Jacobs. You're not excited to have a Josh Jacobs. You're excited for who he drags to the playoffs for you. A J.K. Dobbins, a Dalvin Cook, whoever. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think the Javonte makes a lot of sense. The idea of guys, AJ Dillon as well, who won't have a full role at the start of the season, but it's very easy to create a path where they do. I think those are legitimately likely outcomes. I think Javonte being a low advance rate guy who ended up being healthy in the playoff weeks at a low ownership is probably a pretty realistic number of outcomes. The Knox thing, I think that's a little bit of a crystal balling, and it worked. It obviously this season it turned out to be very true because all of those league winning running backs, and you were totally right. But I think that's sort of guesswork that turned out to be right in this exact season and very easily. I don't know that was a likely outcome.
Well, the only pushback I would give is, and I wasn't hammering Knox being he'll be low advance rate. It was more simple brain, attached to Josh Allen, plays tight end. Yeah. The only pushback I would give that kind of gives it a little bit of credence is every year the market just kind of decides on tight end 2 through whatever. Maybe you exclude Andrews, but every year, like the guys that are going in round 9 and 10, at least recently. Now, this does not mean it's not predictive, but like those guys have not really been smashed. We're wrong. Like last year, it was Noah Fant, it was Mike Gesicki, some of these tight ends who were like, these are the guys that are going to be good. And it turns out we were wrong again, like, so it's like taking these expensive tight ends who the market chooses when there's real running back, wide receiver, maybe quarterback talent still left on the board. Like, don't you think you could always kind of take those guys and it will be lower advance rate on purpose?
I would have to go and actually look in a database to answer this question for you, but I'm pretty confident that tight end at round 9 and 10 has done totally fine in past years, because the only reason I'm saying this is because I looked so much through the things that my program spit out, and it liked taking tight ends in rounds 8 through 10, like quite a bit. So I would guess in the last 5 years, whoever the ADPs at rounds 8 through 10 tight end have performed fine. I don't think they've been like low advance rate on average. Again, I'd have to look through a database to give you exact who has performed so well that was like fine. But
and I think even 5 years ago data maybe is not that relevant to the meta in today's NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big question: is like how far back should you go to get more sample size versus like the NFL is a changing game. It's just like a dicey question. I've experimented with like cutting off years or adding years, and it doesn't change a ton. I really, even like 3 seasons back, if you put it back, I would bet that round 8 through 10 tight end has performed fine. I don't think it's performed as poorly as you think.
Yeah, and I mean that has a large part to do with who was not drafted. Like if we look at last year, that probably did fine because the percent times that the late round tight ends smashed, those are the Gronks, and then the guys who were not drafted that often that smashed.
Knox last year.
Knox and Schultz, but they weren't always drafted is the point. It's so when those players aren't actually drafted, and people are instead drafting a Brevin Jordan or whoever Brevin Jordan was last year, that's of course going to help mid-round tight end.
Yeah, also, Conklin was the other guy last year that crushed in round 18.
That was barely drafted, right? Like, and so when you're not drafting those players, that that obviously matters because then you're not punishing the people who took the suboptimal tight ends.
That seems to be how every season. I mean, this year the same thing happened. A bunch of tight ends that were not always drafted have smashed. Like the Tyler Conklin again. This year.
Bellinger is like he's not a smash, but you're happy to have him. Taysom Hill. I got a Jeff Driscoll team.
I think what happens is there's so many tight ends at the end that none of them end up drafted 100%, and every year some of them smash. I mean, this is the other thing the program fucking loves to do is take 2 of the like round 17 or 18 tight ends because there's just such a long history of a top 12 tight end coming out of those rounds. And it's just like, I will buy lottery tickets there because those lottery tickets seem to cash more often than at any other position. Like,
and that's why I built some more 4
tight end. Yeah, like round 16, or sorry, 15, 16, 17, 18 tight end is a build that it really likes, where you just take 4 stone lottery picks.
I did that a lot on DK and on Underdog. And I think a lesson for Underdog that, I knew this and I didn't even do it this year is every year there are guys I'm taking regularly on DK because it's 20 rounds that I don't take on Underdog. And really the difference between a 17th, 18th round pick versus a 19th, 20 as far as our confidence in the player is very minuscule. So you on Underdog with 18 rounds should really be going out of your way to mix in guys who are rarely drafted. Now, when you draft matters a lot for that. You don't know who might become more popular, but like on a lot of things that saved my DK teams is I was getting Geno Smith. I don't have any Geno Smith on Underdog
too. That was sharp. Yeah. By the way, what you're saying only accounts for these huge fields. Like, I don't think this is something.
Of course, this is not 555 talk, really.
No, you really don't want to do that.
No, and I'm trying to talk about it mostly, which most of the viewers watching this are talking about, which would be in the large field stuff.
Yeah, I have to remind myself. I just spend so much more time thinking about because I'm max entering all those contests, and that's so much of my energy has been put into those. And the BBMs are more just like a thing that I use to get used to how players fall. And
Sure, and I'm a lunatic and think I could actually win again. And I mean,
right.
and look, like, I only advanced 19 teams last year. I got 6 to the semis. I got 1 to the finals. That team won. I only advanced 22 teams this year. I got 6 to the semis. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Like 6 to the semis is obviously crushing. And why is that? It's because I had a lot of Dawson Knox. I had a lot of Russell Gage. Like, these are literally 2 of my higher drafted players. Now, obviously, variance smacked me in the face for those guys to have good weeks after doing bad. But if you're an 8% bro who's like, oh, how dare I have a player stand in my fucking, how dare I go over 8%? A ton of those people I see, they have 40, they have 50 teams. They get maybe 2 or 3 through the one team that they had the Kirk Cousins, KJ Osborne on, right? So,
wow, shots fired as we pull up the KJ Osborne, Kirk Cousins team, right?
Yeah. And then, and I'm going to be, I'm going to do this probably year after year. And many years, my guys are going to suck in the playoffs. And that's just the game that you're playing. But when you're playing these really large field things, I would recommend you take some stands and try to just give you as many teams as you can to the finals, because I looked at the finals last year. There were at least 3 people with 3 teams in the finals. That does not happen in a 160-person final out of like 200 out of 160,000 teams unless people have narrow player pools.
Yeah, you definitely take stands to get something like that to happen through. I don't think it has like a huge difference in terms of your EV of each team individually, but it will make some years more fun and some years a very quick candle snuff. So
sure.
It's
okay. So this team is a Dak and Kirk team, which is a bit of a rare pairing, at least once the schedule came out, because they both had week 7 buys. I have a Josh Allen.
No. Do they? Oh yeah, they do. This must be drafted before bye season. Yeah.
Okay, but that's like, I have a Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins team, which both had week 7 buys, which I did on purpose.
Yes, we talked about this on the last one.
I know that you're like, no, my point is, and that team has Josh Jacobs. My point with that was, many years you're going to have a Josh Jacobs, whatever. If you have the guys that have these huge spike weeks, you can advance whatever. And that team really did advance whatever.
No, I know you can. It's
the data doesn't bear it out.
We've already hashed this out. We disagree, but it doesn't.
That's why I love having you on, Dan. All right, so running back, sexy group of running backs. Deonta Foreman a little bit fell off, but he has a good matchup at least.
This is the only team I'm excited about of the three.
Aaron Jones would be the guy I'm really stoked. AJ Dillon, I guess, did clear concussion protocol, but if he didn't, that's like a smash spot against the Dolphins. And Saquon looks real good, and he got his O-line back, which is like big. He's with it, like the weeks he struggled, he didn't have like half of his O-line. Wide receiver group, sexy group. Boyd going to be lower owned, Gallup low owned, not high confidence in. Julio Jones low owned, not high confidence in. Lockett, Hurts. You got the smashes in JJ, who's going to be really high owned, but did well. Godwin, obviously doing good. And then another 4 tight end team. Irv might be activated. Evan Ingram. Brevin Jordan is like active and inactive.
Plays 5 snaps a week. It's
yeah. And then Hayden Hurst, who maybe
he's coming back this week.
Yeah, I think he played last week too. If I'm
no, he did not play last week.
No, okay.
No, he was game time and ruled out.
So I think it's pretty clear this is your favorite of the teams.
I am. Yeah, I went through this pod as well. I'm the only person with Dak, the only person with Gallup, and only one other person has a single player on Dallas. So I have solo Zeke, solo Dak, solo Gallup, and there's only one CD Lamb and no Schultz. So it would be nice to.
And for week 17 purposes,
I guess that's pretty common across all the pods too. That Dallas is, if it looks like that in this pod, it probably is pretty consistently low across the board.
I don't know if you've checked it out, but just for the audience as well, Hayden Winks on Twitter posts the ownership percentages each round. So if you want to sweat out what the ownership percentages left, the total teams left, having your players, you can check that out at Hayden Winks on Twitter. And Dallas gets to play the Titans week 17, which their pass defense is pretty atrocious. So, You'd be excited for Dak to get through there.
It's live.
Yeah. One of my 5-5-5 teams has Dak and Kirk Cousins as well.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Although again, the 5-5-5, you just want raw projections over the unique is less exciting. But
sure,
I think they project fine too. Like I don't think.
But like if you have all Hertz pods with you this week, for those who don't know the 5-5-5, it's a 2 out of 12 advance, and then it's a 1 out of 6 in week 15 advance, and then it's 1 out of 5 advance this week. And if you make the finals, it's an 11-person final, $250K to first, $17,000, 500 min cash, which I personally prefer the way DraftKings does its high stakes more than Underdog.
Underdog advances everyone.
Underdog tries
to get eliminated.
To me, those who play the high stakes on Underdog, like it really caters to, I think, a volume drafter such as yourself, such as a Peter Jennings, who maybe are maxing the big dog and will have like half the entries in the final. Whereas, I think people who play like, and clearly from the, I love Underdog, so not trying to take shots at them, but from a company perspective, obviously spreading out the money makes it more likely people will do pick'ems, do playoff contests. But I would like, I send an email to Underdog, and I think if you play high stakes and agree, you should reach out as well, where I'd really like to see them change their high stakes structure to make it more similar to DK, because it's kind of deflate. Like the big dog final is 64 people, $1,000 min cash, $100K to first. It's kind of deflating to make a final and to get $1,000 min cash. Like you make the final in DK, you feel so alive. Like you feel like you have a really great chance, right?
I don't mind both. I also think that it affects the strategy in different ways, which can be fun in that you have something different to think about when you're doing each different contest and draft. I wouldn't mind if they did some top heavy, but I like that they have some of these ones that are like this as well, just because, again, like if you're not adjusting, you get punished. And so it is fun to think about how to approach each one instead of just autopiloting them all the same way.
Sure. Do you want to send me your DK team and we'll pull it up? I also got I maxed out the 2K on DK, which was 2 entries. Yep. And I streamed that one for anyone who wants to watch that video, but I got one of those teams to the semi, which it's only 6 teams left. 3 of the 6 will make the finals, where we battle out for 50K to first. So
congratulations. That's awesome. I also max entered that and could not. I got 3rd and 5th in the regular season.
Yeah, I think you were in one of my brackets, and the bracket we were in, the one where you probably got 3rd or 5th, it was crazy where like 8 of the 12 people were live.
It was so tight. From 2nd to 7th the last week was like 25 points. It was crazy.
I like and I have a Geno DK stack in that one. That's what got me through. It's like, the late round made a bit of a resurgence this year with the the Justin Fields, the Trevor Lawrence, the Genos, but I have a feeling we're not going to see that for somewhat. And Jared Goff, but I have a feeling we might. And Carson Wentz was having a great year till he got hurt.
I have so many Carson Wentz teams.
Same, man. All right, guys. So this is. Let me pull this up in a different thing. Pin image.
I didn't know how to combine them into one image, so they're in 4.
This is okay. Let me get that all up. Maybe I'll just actually pull up my Twitter to make this easier. This is Dan's 5-5-5 team. I would be stoked for any Burrow stacks. I saw some people have some Burrow stacks through in BBM3. They're going to be low owned. He has a really high ceiling. He gets the Bills next week. New England is not as good as people think. So you got Chubb is actually questionable, but you got McCaffrey.
The play would be great because he's going to be solo owned for sure.
Yes, after a 9-pointer for sure. And he gets or Brian Robinson, who's I'm excited because he gets the Browns week 17. But McCaffrey, probably the player. I have McCaffrey on one of my 5-5-5s too. Probably the player I'm most excited to roster. Just feels like he's so live to go for 30.
He's so live to just be the running back that you need versus anyone else at any other position.
And he could put up 50 against the Raiders next week. Like that's in the range. Yep. Higgins, Moore, Juju. So Juju turning it on here late. Higgins obviously seeing the field. Elijah Moore actually
seeing the field.
he's seeing the field. You got Knox at tight end, solid tight end pick. You got Montgomery, little mini stack here. They're playing,
Yep.
Ayuk, seeing the field, like he can get it with Purdy. Chark, seeing the field, and I like his chances this week. Claypool,
I think
Fant.
he's going to play this week. I think Fant's going to play this week. I mean, the main part about this team that's so exciting is when you scroll through all the teams that are left, most of them, are riddled with injuries.
Yes.
This team is going to play 20 guys this week. Like 20 guys are going to suit up and play.
To have a full healthy roster. I mean, I think Tannehill's out actually this week, but
I was seeing that they were not sure. Although missing Tannehill's not the end of the world just because it's like he's never doing it anyway.
Yeah, it's like, does he do 2 rushing touchdowns? You have at least Baker, Zay. I wonder how high owned the Zays and the KJ Osbornes are going to be in the 5-5-5 because there were so few teams that had them in general.
No, they're drafted in 100% of drafts. They'll be just as represented as anywhere else.
But like they are heavy chalk in the BBM3. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Well, it's only a 5-person group, so it'll just be variance. But I would have guessed they're very high owned of the teams that are left.
And then White and Zamir White, the white and white combo.
Yeah. White will suit up, but Zamir White will suit up, but I don't know that he actually will see the field.
Oh, hey, if Josh Jacobs goes down,
he could randomly spike. But there's 18 guys that are going to get significant playing time, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and you really just need the wide receiver points. It looks like you need Juju to have a good week. You need Higgins to get 15 or so. And then other than that, you feel it's a 5 running back team with 2 of them being mid to late.
Yeah, 3 early, 2 late.
Very solid team. I may have even been in this draft with you in the offseason. I remember you taking some Burrow teams. I don't really know, but very solid. I'll show the 1-5-5-5 that if I can find this. One of my 5-5-5s, which is probably my favorite one. If I can find. So this kind of speaks to your point about the 5-5-5, is these are 2 of the teams I'm going up against, and I'm not that impressed with them. This one is Peter Jennings' team, which I'll read out the players because I know the image.
Look how many guys on there just aren't playing.
Yeah, well, or just here. Actually, let me do this.
I see like 4 or 5 immediately.
So this team is like Carr, Eckler, Jacobs, Allen, Tyreek. So this is like a top-heavy team that has almost no depth.
Waller's back.
He's got Waller. Cobb is playing, Cousins playing, but then like all of these guys are close to zeros, like out.
Not playing.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yes. Back. Plays. Probably not.
Doesn't play. Yeah.
Probably not. Probably Swift's backfield now, but so like a really top heavy team that goes really as like Eckler and Hill and Keenan goes. And
it's like a DFS lineup. Like he has guys that just have to do it at every position. And that's what best ball usually looks like in the playoffs. Like most teams are pretty decimated at this point. But you can just sun run and smash all your players. So it's nice if you have depth somehow at this point.
Yes. And then these are 3 of the teams in my pod. And then here's this team, which is this is a pretty good team, but it's only down to Lawrence, who has a bad matchup against the Jets this week, I think, on Thursday Night Football. So it's Lawrence. You got Barkley and ETN. You got Zay Jones. You got AJ Brown. You got Dotson. You got Kittle. You got Eckler. So really strong top-heavy group. Some guys seeing the field. You got Judy, Ingram, Garrett Wilson, great pick. Marvin Jones, Hawkinson, Moss, Ayuk, Sky Moore, Deontay Foreman.
Any chance Zach Moss just buries you?
Dude, if Zach Moss does it to me after getting cut by the Bills, rough.
By the way, Zach Moss was one of my 5 most advanced players this season.
That's funny. I X'd him out this year. I just was like,
I fucking was so tilted because he really could have carried me to some insane week. He was on 3 of my 11 advanced 5-5-5 teams. He was on my 2,500 team, and
his expected fantasy points in that game was 22.
I know it would have been so massive. I advanced so many games with him as the last round pick.
That's so funny. I was out on Moss this year. So this is a strong team, and then my team is very strong, but it lost Debo, so it's got it. Cousins is pretty much how the quarterback. You got Jacobs, who's not going to be that high owned anymore. Yep. Obviously, Peter had him. Walker, who I think will be healthy now, and I think could have a big week. You got Godwin, Watson, AJ Brown, Schultz, Pacheco, Jeff Wilson, who should be back, Hollywood, who like the case is thin.
Yeah, Hollywood quarterback is so brutal.
CMC. Yeah, because I don't even know if they're getting Colt McCoy.
Yeah,
Tyler Conklin, Debo. Unfortunately, I lost Debo, but maybe it helps CMC. Pierce out.
Yeah.
And then Osborne and Tony. Like, if Tony gets up to 30 snaps, like, Mayfield and Mills.
Do it if he's healthy, for sure. Tony can do it.
Yeah, Mayfield and Mills probably not, but at least whatever insurance. Alec Pierce and Bellinger. So there's a very strong team that.
Did you have Jefferson? Who is your Minnesota stack?
Osborne.
Okay. Yeah, you might Mayfield or Mills could really save you then. I thought you had Jefferson, in which case you would need Kirk Cousins to have a good game or else you're fucked anyway. But you could survive off like a 20
basically even this team has such a high floor that if players don't smash, I don't have. And from looking at like Peter's team, for example, like, okay, I just got to fade like Allen and Tyreek and Eckler. Have some overlap with this team, Yeah,
you're just fading Eckler. It looks like if Eckler has a bad game, you're in very good shape.
But like Christian Watson, pretty good spot for him, I would think. Still feel good about him. Feel good about the Schultz, Conklin. Bellinger is still getting the targets, so like he's still alive. And it's a game stack against the.
Can he see anymore?
He
can see anymore.
The fact he returned was like the some of my late round picks that saved me is Conklin and Bellinger. Yeah, he almost lost his eye. It was crazy.
Yeah, that was a scary one.
So I obviously wish I still had Debo, wish I still had Dameon Pierce, but fully healthy roster other than that. And when you have Jacobs, Walker, and CMC plus Pacheco and Wilson as insurance for like 3 of your 2 running back spots and flex. Feels like that's like around a 60-point floor. And then you just got to fill in wide receiver with a bunch of darts, AJ Brown getting tackled. AJ Brown
could be really bad with Minshew, but we'll see.
Well, or he could be great because he's just an alpha and they're like, here's 7-yard slant after 7-yard slant. Go make it happen. And their secondary's been awful for Dallas.
Yeah. My concern is that Philly's proven they're willing to just run the ball 90% of the time when they don't want to throw the ball. They did that last season a lot.
For sure, but maybe they don't have the liberty if they're down.
That's true.
So we'll see about that. But I saw some people trying to sort like. I'm sorry, say it again.
Playing Chicago this week.
Dallas is playing.
No, Philly.
They're playing
Dallas is playing Philly.
Yeah.
Okay. They'll be done probably then.
And I saw some people trying to be like Gardner Minshew's stats with Dallas Goedert the past couple of years is X. It's like, well, hello, they didn't have AJ fucking Brown. So I think AJ Brown's going to get his, even with Goddard back. But we'll see. Obviously, AJ Brown, a chalky player, a guy I targeted a lot last year. So enough about roster baiting to our teams. Maybe
so fun, though.
It is so fun.
It's the whole reason you draft 1,500 teams is so that you can do this.
Absolutely. Hey, and I'll definitely have a stream tomorrow maybe where you guys just send me your lineups and I pull them up. I don't want to take all of Dan's time for that. But Dan, we're coming up on an hour here. I don't want to take all your time. Are there any other lessons, takeaways, thought experiments, whatever, anything about best ball? Can be half point PPR versus PPR. I put out, we could go through my tweet where I kind of like listed the wide receivers and tight ends and offenses we probably thought were going to be bad and how they all sucked as picks this year and whether the market will bake that in.
I don't know. My takeaway is the same as last year, although I never listened to myself, which is to not try to be as much of a player evaluator.
I'm the opposite. I want to have even harsher stands next year.
For sure, I think that's like, and again, the reason I never listen to myself is because it's more fun to have harsh stands. I wish, and the sample's never big enough for us to even, like, we always just only remember the last season or two anyway as to how to even evaluate how accurate your player takes are, and there's so much fucking variance in it.
But to me, it's like, it's just so tilting where it's like, I look at Cam Akers and I'm like, man, I knew this was a terrible pick, right? Like, I'm not taking him. And then the couple times he drops 2 rounds, I'm like, well, What am I that confident in my player takes? Like, I guess I have to work them in. And then
Yeah,
you
but
look
like
at your team and you're like, fuck, I would have
then he's
advanced if I
Josh
just didn't
then
take
he's
Cam
Josh
Akers.
Jacobs sometimes. So like it
Yes.
goes both ways.
But I think that's the difference between, Josh Jacobs going from a 6th to the 8th cannot be compared from Cam Akers going from, like, he was a 3rd,
Cam Akers went from the 3rd to the 6th though. Like
3rd to 5th, probably, yeah.
it's he just as easily could be the guy that just somehow was the number one. Like, in fact, he was going ahead of Josh Jacobs by multiple rounds. Like, you would argue that he had a higher chance of this sort of breakout.
Right, but why was that? Why was that other than
Because
the
at one
Rams
point
won
in
the
his
Super
career,
Bowl last
before the
year?
injury, he looked fucking incredible, and the Rams' offense was projected to be really good, and there was a chance he earned a workhorse role. Like, he absolutely could have just been a workhorse in a top 5 NFL offense. Instead, the Rams are like bottom 5, and he is hated by the coach. So,
Sure. I mean, and he looked bad in the playoffs last year too. Like, we were just hoping he would look good.
He was like 8 months removed from tearing his Achilles, which was like unheard of in the history of mankind. So it's like, who knows?
Well, the Achilles thing, everyone's looked bad except for Deontay Foreman. And so now Deontay Foreman's had an extra year or two. Maybe we need an extra year of time. Maybe it's always X them out the year after.
Well, this is the problem with the tech seems to be going so fast that I don't know how much historical data even matters, because whatever the fuck they're doing to these guys is clearly getting better every year, because it's gone from career ending to being back in 2 years to being back in 1 year to being back in 9 months to being back in like 8 months. Like, the procedure is changing so much that I don't know how much we can draw on from guys who tore their Achilles before even a year ago than we can now, because it seems to be like a rapidly progressing field of medicine. It's in the same way that like ACL tears are totally different now than they were 10 years ago.
And I try to fade wisdom of the crowd kind of like that, where when people say things like Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw to rookie wide receivers, or Bill Belichick doesn't use rookie running backs, or 2 years ago it was you can't take the rookies because due to COVID, they don't have a training camp. Like, when people are doing that, it's already baked into the market, like they're trying to double count. And I'm like, okay, maybe Rodgers doesn't have a choice to throw to anyone but Christian Watson, because Sammy Watkins is approaching 300 pounds. Randall Cobb is, about to get Medicaid, Medicare for all or whatever. And, and the Ramondre thing was like, well, maybe Ramondre is just so good that he's going to force Bill's hand. And they now, obviously, James White got hurt last year. That helped Ramondre. But when people have these confident historical takes, same thing with like the rookies, where I think it's pretty clear the NFL, I think, is going to, I think they already have with as many round 1 wide receivers we got, but I don't think this is a blip of us just getting a talented class. I think it's that athletes are better today. They have better sports science. They have better coaches. They're entering the league more and more ready. And we should be like, every year the market decides some highly drafted player is not worth it. Kadarius Toney, T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, Christian Watson. And every year we are wrong about, so like, I just keep taking these guys. Now, okay, Tutu Atwell, but like I would argue, was just so small that that's not the same thing.
Well, it's always easy to, in retrospect, write off the ones that don't work out and then create the reason. But all these guys had a reason that they weren't going to work out, and then most of them did, but some of them didn't. And then we just, ex post facto, like you're like, oh well, it was too small. That's the reason, but not whatever the reason would have been for all the other guys if they hadn't worked out. Jahan Dotson was another guy, by the way, that on that list that went like absurdly late versus draft capital, and worked out.
John Dotson, yes,
yeah.
But he was even more expensive than he was like at least like around 10, 11 guy by late.
He was around,
and he's not really
11,
smashed.
12.
He's not really smashed, but he's coming on late, which that's a very repeatable pattern for talented rookies, is when the money matters, they're coming on to their best.
He smashed early and then got hurt.
He was
he was a smash. He had like multiple
off of hyper efficiency though. He was he
was catching touchdowns, but
yes,
and Carson Wentz was throwing for like 350 yards a game in garbage time.
It wasn't like, oh wow, this is like Jamar Chase talent, or like,
no, not at all. But he wasn't no one was claiming he's Jamar Chase, but he's a first round, wide receiver going pick 135, I think.
Sure.
At the end of draft season, he was at one point going like 150, I think.
Yeah, Breece Hall is a guy that tilted. Like, he's a guy I selected a lot in the 5.55s just because DK kind of decided he should become a late fifth, and I was like, well, I think he's really talented. I like the Jets' playoff schedule, so it is tilting to lose a Breece Hall, and that's going to happen every year. Like, if you take player stands, you're going to lose some of those guys to injury.
Breece Hall was someone I wanted no piece of in the high stakes stuff. He makes a lot of so Breece Hall is back into the category of Javonte Williams for me, of guys who I thought would have a low advance rate, but who could be really valuable in the playoffs, which is not something I really wanted in the higher stakes contests, but was a lot
I thought it was
low stakes. He had ended up, for what it's worth, he
Yeah.
got to the field really early and was going to be a smash. Like, he was going to be an advanced rate smash if he stayed healthy. But I'm not sure. Again, it's tough to know in retrospect, like, what the real likely outcomes were. The team seemed so low on getting him onto the field in like a immediate role for a while that it really seemed like he was going to be more in like a timeshare for longer than he ended up being.
I just was not that impressed with Michael Carter
Part of the season before. I mean, that's fair. That's a player take.
And I thought Breece Hall was perhaps a transcendent talent where I was like, well, that was their only chance of winning games, just to ride this guy. And he was like,
and I mean, that clearly ended up being right. So,
and he fit the pattern of JT to me, where explosive guy going around the same cost as JT did 2 years ago.
Yeah, JT took a long time to win that job, though. No.
But Marlon Mack tore his Achilles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. On week
but
one.
he probably would not have been as much a snap.
But a bit. He wasn't like an 80% snap guy for a very long time, or 70% snap guy, or whatever constitutes a workhorse. Like, he was like 60-40 with Hines.
It wasn't like, I don't even like, I'm not getting that granular. I was just like, this guy looks like he's fast, strong, can break touchdowns, like lizard brain. Give me that guy. And I was not into the Dalvin Cooks as much, the Derrick Henrys, the Najees as much.
Yeah, you're worried about the age cliff and or Najee sucking at football.
Right? No, I just preferred Kelsey, Diggs. I did take Swift and Saquon. Those were the two guys I kind of did take more. And obviously Swift has not worked out great, but Swift's on my on my 2K team, so who knows? But
he's getting playing time again, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Dan. Well, how about you give us some closing thoughts? And, I don't know if you have anything for the people to look out for at Dan_Zack on Twitter. If some rando is reaching out to you, trying to get you with like Dan _Zack, someone was trying to hack your profile or fool people earlier.
That was
Dan
awful.
would not do that. So just know that if you ever get reached out by someone.
Getting impersonated on Twitter is bizarrely stressful. No, I have nothing to promote. I don't know. Closing thoughts. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you already probably know, but best ball's great. You should play best ball. It's really fun to draft. It's really fun to not have to manage. And you can get as nerdy or as not nerdy as you want about it. I don't know. It's just a wonderful form of fantasy sports that I am really happy to play. It's
absolutely. I want to talk to you about that off stream for a second because I have ideas to help grow best ball. But all right, guys, we'll definitely have Dan on this off season to rip another draft with me. Dan, I think our team we drafted finished in like third or something, so it had Cup on it. We were close, but all right, guys. If you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, really helps me out. I'll be back with a video tomorrow. Gonna have Peter Jennings on as well pretty soon, if not this week, maybe next. He's always a great voice in the best ball space. Have a great day, guys. Good luck the rest of the way. We're on to week 16. Peace.